Chapter 4, Mishnah 5. The Mishnah continues discussing what was done with different surpluses in the temple. 1 manna of Ketores, incense, was offered on the golden altar inside the temple sanctuary every day of the year, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. Like all communal offerings, the Ketores had to be bought from that year's terumah funds. Since the amount of Ketores prepared for the year was greater than what was typically needed, at the start of the year, there would usually be Ketores left over from the previous year. The Mishnah discusses what was done with this leftover Ketores, bought from the previous year's terumah funds, to make it usable for the new year's Ketores offerings. We now turn to the words of the Mishnah. What did they do with the surplus Ketores to make it usable for the offerings of the new year? The Mishnah now describes a series of exchanges through which the leftover Ketores is first deconsecrated and then bought back by the temple using the New Year's terumah funds so that it may now be used for the New Year's offerings. The Mishnah describes the first exchange. They would take from the terumah funds money to pay the wages of the craftsmen who prepared the Ketores, and one of the temple administrators would accept this money for them as their agent. Now that this money has been paid to the craftsmen, it is no longer consecrated temple property. The second exchange. Next, they would deconsecrate the leftover Ketores upon the unconsecrated wages of the craftsmen, i.e., they would take the money that had been paid to the craftsmen and use it to redeem the leftover Ketores. As a result, the sanctity went from the Ketores itself onto the coins. The leftover Ketores was now unconsecrated, while the coins were once again consecrated temple property. They would then give the now unconsecrated leftover Ketores to the craftsmen as their pay. The third exchange. Finally, the temple buys back the leftover Ketores from the craftsmen with the new terumah funds of the new year. Through this purchase, the sanctity of the new terumah money transfers to the Ketores, and the money is deconsecrated. The craftsmen now accept this money as their pay, while the leftover Ketores becomes usable for the New Year's offerings, since it has now been bought with the current year's terumah funds. Most of the New Year's Shekalim are usually deposited in the treasury chamber before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It is, however, possible for there to be a delay in receiving the Shekalim. If this happens, there will be no new terumah funds available with which to buy the leftover Ketores back from the craftsmen. The Mishnah discusses what is to be done should this occur. If the new Shekalim arrive in their proper time before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then the leftover Ketores is bought back from the craftsmen with the New Year's terumah funds as described above in the third exchange. If not, if there is a delay and the new terumah funds are not available before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then the leftover Ketores is bought back from the craftsmen using the old terumah funds. Through this purchase, the leftover Ketores will become consecrated once again, but only with the sanctification of last year's Shekalim. While the Ketores and all other communal offerings are ideally to be brought from the current year's terumah funds, when this is not possible, they may be brought even from the previous year's terumah.